committee meeting tonight. I, Leslie Stevenson, I'm going to be joined by Councilmember Bonsall and Councilmember Thompson. We are going to be amending our agenda. We are only going to cover the first topic, CRA application submitted by Ventura Commons LLC. And with us tonight is Mr. Pete Ventura Jr. to speak on behalf of that project. And so just to orient everyone to your materials, you should have a packet that looks like this on the table. Right behind it, that's the actual application. Right behind it should be a development plan. You should also have a second copy of that development plan that's dated, received May 14. Those should be, I believe, identical. If they aren't identical, they're very, very close. You should also have, thank you. You should also have the planned Fidelity building in front of you. Those three documents have been utilized to share with the Planning Commission thus far, some of the hopes of the project, and then we were also provided just last evening with a draft of the Community Reinvestment Area Agreement. And so this is the first time this community is hearing about the project. So we'd like to ask Mr. Ventura to maybe start with an overview of the proposed project, and then as you conclude that, we'll share out this memo we just received from the, nope, we won't. We'll take a moment to reflect on the last material the council just received.
Yep.
Okay. So, Mr. Ventura, could you start by telling us a little bit about the project at the Fidelity building that's in the CRA application?
Yes.
And welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Myself and my wife, we bought the old Fidelity building down here. It's been vacant for quite a while. And our plans are to rehab this building into a event venue type banquet space on the first floor where the old bank was, and then turn the rest of the building into office space for business clients to come into. At first, we are going to get the banquet space going, and then we're going to develop kind of white box the upper floors and get them tenant ready. So when we do sign someone, then we just have to build out the space, and they'll be ready to go. So that's the basic project in a nutshell. We're looking to get started here soon, and we're excited to hopefully get it going.
Are the condo spaces part of the initial plan, or is it like a secondary?
No.
So the plan drawing.
Yeah.
You got it? I'll share.
Here, those extra.
You're fine. This is the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. We were initially approved to do either or,
Gotcha.
residential or office, but we're looking at doing office.
Doing all
at
office
this point.
now.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So these were kind of renderings of the time, but
Sure.
you can see the office space on the front part of the building, but the back,
Right.
they did draw it out for residential.
Yeah. Like you said, that will just be
But those will all be
clean
office.
slated, so they can
Right.
be built out to whatever
Absolutely.
needs to be.
Yeah. Even these renderings are just an idea of what something could look like
Sure, of
in
course.
that space, yeah. But we think we could get possibly 70 jobs, I believe is what we said in there, out of the project, if we're at full capacity there. So we would hope to get there. So, yeah.
Did you say already, I may have missed it, sorry, with the shuffle, like, is the event center more like conferences? Is it more like family functions? Like, what's the intended draw for that?
The space itself, I believe, once we build it out, it could hold up to 200 to 300 people. So I think we'd
Okay.
be more an upscale place. I think it's going to be pretty nice on the inside when we're done with it. So I think it'd be more for like weddings or large functions, more formal probably in nature. But, we'd be up for renting it out as well. There's going to be some break-off spaces within there for smaller functions, if there's bridal showers or, really anything. Even if the high school or, different groups within the city want to use it, I think it could be somewhat multi-use as well,
Okay.
depending on the time of day.
Speaking of time of day, what are you thinking in terms of hours it'll be available?
I think most events will be, Friday, Saturday nights, evenings, for the most part. So I think we'll try to work in day events as well, like on the weekends if we could. Like I mentioned before, if there's a shower of some sort or some day event on Saturday. But I think 90% of the events will probably be in the evening there on the weekends. It's just nice because it's opposite. If you have office clients in there, they're going to be in there 8 to 5, and then if we're having events in the evening, you're not crossing over as far as parking goes and stuff like that. So it's a nice mix between the building, I think.
So we mentioned parking. That was something else I wanted to hear about. I know that you addressed that a little bit, the Planning Commission. Can you talk about what is the plan for parking when 200-300 people might show up?
We have an agreement with the lot next to us, and I think that's Liberty Dialysis, I want to say right there. So there's parking there, then there's 2 Norwood municipal lots that have free parking at kind of behind the Walgreens there next to the high school. And then we figure if there's a lot of overflow, I know you have the garages as well,
Okay.
back kind of behind Central Park there, whatever that is. But some of the studies we've done as well is a lot of people now are going to these functions in Ubers and not so much taxis in Cincinnati, but you're actually not getting as much parking at these events as you used to in the past. Especially, I think this is a good location for that as well, to Uber kind of anywhere in the city. Norwood's pretty easy to get to
Yeah.
and home from.
Yeah. I do a lot of shared rides when I'm going downtown Cincinnati for events, so I can attest to that. It is pretty user-friendly. Any other questions or comments coming up around the plan?
What's your timeline?
We'd like to get started in November, if possible, if we can get everything through in time. And then the first plan is to get kind of the exterior and the first floor up and running, and then obviously white box the rest of the building. And then we're gonna, from my experience, you can usually attract more clients once the space is kind of ready, and you can take clients into it and they can visualize it. Right now it's just a gutted space for the most part. So I think the total build out I put on there was 2 years, as far as hopefully leasing the space up and getting the building filled. But we would hope to get the office building going, the banquet space within the next 8 months would be nice, I think.
Mr. Bonsall?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. So it seems to me that I guess with the timeline that's kind of been laid out, we won't be able to, of course, get anything on tonight's agenda for council, but we would probably want to try to, if we can as a committee, aim to refer some things to council. I would think at that first meeting in November, if we can get everything together before that.
So we did receive a draft, thank you for that comment, of the Community Reinvestment Area Agreement, which would actually be considered in an ordinance whether or not to approve the project. Some of the information seemed to be in draft form still, so since this committee has now heard the concept, I think we should report out that we'd like to consider this and welcome questions from the other members of council so we can address those before this committee convenes again at the latest in November. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Bonsall, any thoughts on trying to meet ahead of the next regular meeting of council, or potentially adding this to the agenda we've already set for November 7th when we routinely meet? So right now
I'm open for either.
open for either.
Yeah, I would definitely prefer that if we do have another special meeting, let's do it after Election Day. But I'm okay though if we want to have a longer meeting on the 7th as well. I think that we could get through our agenda, like the drafts of these things, and I think you could probably have a more concrete version by that point. And I don't think it'll take us that long to get through that.
So we are scheduled, we've discussed meeting on the 7th. We previously had moved one agenda item to the 7th, so that would potentially have us at 6 agenda items, which is feasible. We could consider starting earlier than our normal start of 7 if we wanted to, but that day is still good.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things, Mr. Ventura, that I wanted to go back to that were in the draft, and I think given that we'll have a little more time to consider, I'll follow up with you. And that has to do with the schedule for hiring and how you might build out, and just thinking a little bit, hearing more about the plan to attract and what kinds of businesses you might be attracting to that office space. Do you have any thoughts on that yet, or is that something we can come back to?
Yeah, I guess, the market will tell us what kind of clients go in there, but I think it's going to be a pretty nice space. So I'm hoping for Class A or B plus space going in there. So, I'm hoping to get office type workers. I know there used to be an attorney in there and an insurance agent and a dentist, and I think there were 3 or 4 attorneys actually in there at some point. But yeah, I would like to attract, clientele like that if I could.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's similar to some other development projects in the city as well, so that's helpful to hear. Did you have any questions of us? Or anything else you wanted to share out?
Not really. I think part of me just trying to get it moving forward with the winter coming up as well, and to jump on the exterior work. And so if I don't get started by a certain time,
Yeah.
I'm delayed pretty good. So
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. I know we tried to get this moving earlier in the month, but we had to postpone our meeting. That was kind of a last notice thing, but glad we could hear it today. In our reporting out, we'll seek any other questions from the other members of council that we might need to address, and then move forward with the 7th. Hopefully, we're being able to report out a final recommendation.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just a couple of thoughts. I was going through the draft agreement, and there's a few things that we need to clean up. Just that I think you and I need to communicate about how are we going to word this kind of thing. I just want to make the point for council, this in the terms of the agreement, you can make things, these are the requirements we have. We actually absolutely need this in order for us to have an agreement. This was what we're going to hold the developer to. And then other things we can just list. And the jobs is one where it's not necessarily required to be a part of it's not necessarily a condition of getting the tax abatement necessarily. We can word it that way. It's a requirement that we list those numbers in here. There are, for example, the same commercial side applies to a large apartment building. Well, that's not going to create jobs. But I think the state wants to have some numbers to point to as they look at should we keep the CRA opportunity going? So for this project in particular, I think it might be worth looking at. We can expect, likely, it's spec office space. So we have no idea how long it's going to take to fill up, or what the tenants are going to be when they move in, what the economy is going to be like at any given time. Cornerstone is a very different project than the north, the buildings just north of us turned out to be when they first opened, and the kind of tenants that moved in, simply because of the state of the economy at the time. So it might be worth thinking about what, high end, what we think the job creation might be, the new jobs that might be in there in 3 years or 4 years from now. And also, here's kind of just as a range of what we expect to come from this. But I think that part of the CRA process is, regardless of whether we end up with really high income generating tenants in there, or we just get an occupied, maintained office space and banquet facility that's available for the use of Norwood residents, that's part of the incentive of having the CRA program in the first place. We want the property developed and whatever we can offer. So it's just a thought. There's different ways to word those parts of it as to whether or not this is a real requirement, or here's what we're shooting for, or we expect this number, it might turn out to be that kind of number. But as far as the timeline, as far as the investment in the project, as far as the square footage of what's going to be redone, that's the kind of thing that we would want to definitely have. Okay, we expect you to invest this much in the project in order to be eligible to receive the tax abatement. So that's just kind of the different ways we can word this. So I was trying to get a usable agreement, possibly maybe get passed tonight, but that's not, there's not enough, there's not quite enough there. And I didn't have a chance to look at it earlier today, so we're trying. I think we might be able to have it we should be able to have something for the next council meeting, depending on whether council members agree on whether, yeah, this is where we want to go or not, so. And I would just, if I could just, I'd ask you to stay for the council meeting and
Sure.
kind of lay it all out for all of council so they know
Sure.
what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with all that, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, I want to acknowledge Mr. Gary's help as well in getting this draft together. Thank you, Mr. Ventura, for being with us and for sticking around to share out as we give our report out today as well. Given the hour and the minute, I'm going to suggest that we adjourn and move forward with our next meeting on the 7th with these agenda items and a willingness to make a decision at that time. So, thank you all.